Hi everyone. So, I was thinking I would talk to you a little bit about how I'm feeling today, like I do every day, but also talk to you about because I really want to use this platform to talk to you about being depressed and being emotionally having emotional difficulties and about where I was and how I got to where I am now, which is in such a healthier place. So first, I want to talk a little bit about how I'm doing today. Yesterday was a decent day. I was focused very much on my work, and I'm getting more excited about it now because the first big project of my company is almost done, or at least my responsibility for it is almost done. It'll be over this weekend, and the first draft of the first book, will be done, and then the rest of it is just going to be getting feedback from the author, getting feedback from whoever they want to read it, etc., and the logistics of publishing the book. But that has put into a little feeling there in the stomach regarding something else, but that has made the end goal more, not just more immediate, but more tangible to me. Like I can actually do this. This is something I can do. Okay, I've got it, and that's just gonna spur me on for more stuff, which I'm really looking forward to. That being said, I'm still in the process of getting over this breakup, and I miss him very much. He is headed to his country of origin to visit family today. We haven't spoken for 3.5 weeks, and the thing that I keep just coming back to is how much I love him. Like how much I love him. He's so wonderful, and how loved I felt by him, and how I'm gonna have that in my heart, and that's not something that will ever change, and that our relationship was this just like amazing, wonderful thing, and nothing will ever touch that because we're never going to see each other again, and that's something I just have to accept. But that also means that relationship, that whole experience is this beautiful, beautiful thing that can never be tarnished. And that's a comforting thought. I just want him to be happy. Phil, if you don't care, you don't have to watch. So I wanted to talk about how, even though I'm sad and I've got that kind of going on, I can still focus on other things, and I can let go of any thoughts that maybe aren't the most useful. Just kind of like, oh, that thought's there. Let it go. Let the emotions go. So I've been feeling a little bit sadder about it this morning and last night. Mornings and nights are the kind of the period of time that's harder, right? That's when you're first getting up and when you're going to bed, obviously, and you have less to think about, less to keep your mind occupied. But yeah, that's really all I have to say about that. I mean, I still have those emotions that are in my stomach and in my heart, and I catch myself tensing up and letting it go. So what I wanted to talk more about was, because this is what I really want to kind of get into, was that sorry, I'm getting distracted. I'm going to allow that thought to come. I'm observing it, and I'm letting it go. I'm not listening to it. I'm not listening, and I'm going to move on. So what I really wanted to do with this is sort of give people who might be a little depressed or have whatever it is going on in their life, and people who don't think that they can get out of maybe where they are, because that's where I was a little over a year ago. I was depressed, and I just did not think there was a way out, as far as like I thought I screwed my life up, and that was pretty much it, because I'd reached a certain age and I had no idea how to unscrew it, and I was just lost. And what I started doing, there's a book called The Artist Way, and I tried to do it a bunch of times. It's a 12-week program, like a workbook that you go through, and you do a chapter a week. And I tried to do it a bunch of times before, but I don't think I'd ever gotten past chapter 7, maybe even chapter 6. I don't remember. Somewhere between 6, 7, and 8. I never made it past that area. But I decided I'm going to do it this year, you know, especially once COVID started. I was really able to concentrate on it. And what I started doing was writing. The main thing about this book is that you have to write pages, write in a journal every morning. And it doesn't matter what you write, you just have to write stream of consciousness for 3 pages. I gave myself 6. And I just started writing. And what I did was I used a book called The Heart of Buddhist Teachings as sort of as an inspiration, or as a thing to meditate on as I went along. And I somehow got into this thing where I began devoting a week. At first I was like, okay, well, I'll devote this week to the First Noble Truth. It's a book about Buddhism, so it was talking about the Noble Truths, the 4 Noble Truths, which are the big things in Buddhism, right? The big pillars of Buddhism. So I was like, okay, well, I'll devote 1 week to writing about the First Noble Truth. But then there are turns of the wheels within the Noble Truth, right? So there's 3 turns of the wheel. There's recognition, encouragement, and acceptance, I think, or being understood. So the first Noble Truth is the existence of suffering. Basically, there is suffering, and first you recognize what the suffering is. You identify it, like a doctor would be like, okay, does it hurt here? Does it hurt there? You figure out where it hurts and what that hurt is. And then the encouragement was sort of thinking about having a deeper understanding of it. Where does it come from? And then, you know, once that has been done, like completely delved into, then you understand, right? You get to the understanding. So I ended up devoting actually 1 week to the first turning of the wheel, 1 week to the second, and 1 week to the third. And what I started, I didn't think that would be enough to talk about, honestly. I was like, okay, yeah, well, I'm suffering, but blah, blah, blah. I can just list it out and that's it, right? But no, once you start on this thing, things just start coming to you, and you start having these realizations I started having these realizations that were just like one after another, like big, huge realizations for me. And I just wanted to kind of start sharing with you what those were and how I got out of that place. So what the suffering that I was looking at, honestly, was the suffering that was attached to my weight. I had a big problem, had and still have a big problem with the size that I'm at. And that's a different, well, it's not really a different story, it's a similar story. It's a story that's in tandem. I keep looking over here because I have, I had been working on a sort of a cleaned up version so that eventually I can write this into a book. But so the first part is the recognition of suffering, right? And I recognized that I was suffering because of my weight and the shame I felt. So the emotions around that, right? The suffering around that, the type of suffering I was feeling was shame and self-hatred and loss of self-respect and self-esteem and regret and embarrassment. That was the emotional suffering. And then physically, you know, my stomach was in the way of everything, and I felt ugly and uncomfortable and out of shape and like honestly deformed. And I continually thought about it, and I continually beat myself up about it. I remembered a time that I wasn't like that, and I was feeling like my joints were hurting and my hands were falling asleep, and I think I really do think it had to do with being the size that I was. I've lost some weight, and I haven't lost everything. But I had all these problems. I was unhappy about everything. Right, just remembering when it wasn't like that, and just berating myself for it all the time. My stomach still gets in the way, and my stomach got in the way then, and I wasn't able to hold my boyfriend as closely as I wanted to, or anything. Everything was getting in the way, and I could feel it, like, ugh, and I still do, but I'm working on it. And one of the things that the book talks about, the Buddhism kind of talks about, is like not pushing those emotions away, but just recognizing that they're there and allowing them to be there. You're like, hey, I see you. You can hang out if you want, and just being generous and kind with them, honestly. And then I started like thinking about why the weight was still there, like what was the cause of this, and it was fear, right? And that made me feel bad about myself again, because I used to be, when I was younger, if I found that I was afraid of something, I'd do like you fear, and I would go and do it, whatever it was that I was afraid of, with the exception of heights. That's a different story. But anything that I was afraid of, I would go and do to prove to myself, to just basically give the middle finger to fear. And that's not who I was anymore. And I was, becoming more aware of the fact that fear and suffering had stopped me from living my life. And then I thought about like my friends. Like if I had a friend who felt this way, I would feel terrible for them. And I'd try and understand them the best I could, and I would try and take care of them as much as I could, and try and help them as much as I could. And that was the sort of beginning of me having something of sympathy for myself, which is a really important thing. I didn't believe that I deserved forgiveness or anything good. I didn't believe that, but I also knew that I couldn't keep living my life the way I was living it. I still am currently broke, but I am working on it, and I'm almost out of it. But at the time, like, I did not see any hope for anything, and I just had this vision of living another 10 years, living to be like 50, 60 years old and still being in the same situation, and it was terrifying. And like thinking about the idea of coming to the end of my life and never having done anything with my life, and thinking about all the potential that I had that I wasted. All I did was beat myself up about it. I couldn't figure out how to change it. So all I did was berate myself for it, and that did not help. And I started coming to the conclusion that even if I don't believe that I deserve anything better, that if I want to live a different life, I needed to stop doing that. I wasn't quite sure how to, but I did start. I've been in therapy for a long time. My therapist had died about 2. There's a feeling, so we'll let that feeling come, and we'll let that feeling go. Just like, I'll let it come, and I'll just let it hang out for as long as it wants to be there. I've been in therapy for a long time, so I did know a lot of stuff about like self-realization, but working on oneself. And the thing that I was aware of that helped me was like being aware of the fact that these thoughts were not useful. They were not serving me. They weren't doing anything for me. So even if I thought that I deserved to be beaten up for it, like to beat myself up for it every day, all day long, even though I believe that that's what I deserved, I recognized that if I continue to do that, my life will not change, and that it's not helping me get out of here. It's not. It's actually actually a problem. So I started working on recognizing when I was having those thoughts, and the closest thing I could come to at the time of letting them go, just being like, that's not useful, and concentrating on something else, thinking about something else. So yeah, I mean, maybe that's as far as I'll go with that this time around. But I mean, I started there, right? And eventually I was able to gain some sympathy for myself. And eventually when I started, I was writing for all this time, writing in the journal for all this time, I was doing a lot of self-examination. And, you know, as you're doing that, you come up against these thoughts and feelings that are scary and you don't want to deal with, and you haven't dealt with. That's why you haven't dealt with them, because they're scary. But I forced myself to continue writing about them, and every time I did that, I would have this amazing revelation that would help me. So I actually started getting excited about when I would feel myself tense up and feel that fear. So I'm like, oh, that's it. That's I'm gonna get another revelation. And it just kind of kept on going from there. Anyway, that's pretty much what I want to talk about for the time being. And I just want to say that I am grateful for my experience of being depressed and of sorry, I got distracted. Because hopefully it will allow me to help others in the same situation. So I just want to remind you all that you should remember that you can always choose to have a grateful day.